and we have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA, gayusatv.org. I'm Andy Hum.
Is that the new
Yes.
the new twist?
Yes.
I'm Ann Northrup, also at gayusatv.org.
And what a week. And we have to say at the top of the show, we're taping on Wednesday, and we know a lot is happening on Thursday and Friday and every day. But,
Probably Wednesday afternoon after we finish taping,
But
too.
in the news, basically what's happening is that the Trump and the Republicans are grasping, as they always do, for every piece of power, and they're becoming more desperate as the midterm election nears.
I think they're hanging on by their fingernails.
No. They've got the power now. They ain't giving it up.
Well, we will see. But you will see before we will see on this show, but
We have a lot of
next
LGBT
week.
news, too.
Meanwhile, yes, and from the Trump administration, and the U.S. State Department is ending recognition of domestic partners for visas for employees of international organizations.
And the anti-gay Republican candidate for governor of Michigan is trying to fudge his stances now, but activists are not having it.
Massachusetts bigots, and that's a kind thing to call them after you see this, are stooping as low as possible to overturn the transgender rights law. This is a new 30-second commercial that is so bad that I didn't want to run it on the show.
I think you need to see it, but hide your children.
Yeah.
In better news, Wisconsin was ordered by the courts to cover gender confirmation surgery under its health plans.
Lambda Legal Defense is suing the Social Security Administration on behalf of a lesbian who is trying to collect survivor benefits on the grounds of her partner of 29 years, but because the partner died before they were able to marry, Social Security is turning them down.
And that's all the time we have. Libraries in Wisconsin and Louisiana have been challenged by the right wing for transgender content in the children's section.
Vicious anti-gay attacks in Brooklyn, New York, Washington, D.C., and Athens, Greece.
The High Court of Trinidad and Tobago has upheld the ruling against the anti-buggery law there.
We will review a couple of plays, Bernhardt Hamlet and The Nap, play about snooker with a transgender twist, and we'll tell you about a new documentary movie about Studio 54.
Yes, it's about snooker, not snooky. Okay. The week started with this horrible story in the New York Times about Rod Rosenstein. By the time you see this, he may be out, and we may be all on the streets over, the firing of Rosenstein and Mueller. We just don't know. But it's all very depressing.
Or the Republicans may also decide that is not good for them to get rid of him, and he may still have a job.
All right. But but that's the context in which we're doing this. So the
the context we're doing it in is the whole Kavanaugh thing.
And that's what we want to talk about.
Yeah.
The gloves are off by everybody. People are dug in. Again, the Republicans said they were going to vote on Friday morning. More stuff came out today on Wednesday. But what's all this doing socially? It was sort of nice to have it all happen in the context of Bill Cosby being let off in handcuffs for his sexual assaults. It was nice to see Ted Cruz and his wife get hounded out of a restaurant. I even had gay people on Facebook. Oh, we have to be civil. Civil? You think these people are civil? They're trying to take away all of your civil rights.
Yeah. Now, look.
Civil?
I don't think that you have to go overboard.
No.
And I think you ought to watch your language a little, because I think we have to retain the moral high ground.
Yes.
But going into a restaurant to yell at someone for his bad deeds is well within the bounds of appropriateness and civility. Although I appreciated the commentator I saw one evening this week after that say, He's got a big race in Texas. What's he doing eating at an expensive restaurant in Washington, D.C.?
Congress is in session.
I understand, but it was Monday night. He could have...
You should be making phone calls. You should be dialing for dollars. And, you know, the Supreme Court itself, obviously, is very conscious of the fact that they only have 8 members. And frankly, I wish they would just leave it at 8 members. And if the court has to divide on things and can't settle an issue with a real majority, you know, that's fine. That's certainly what they did when they wouldn't confirm Merrick Garland. But they're delaying accepting cases that will resolve the issue of sexual orientation discrimination being sex discrimination. The Zarda case, the Bostock case. And Alliance Defending Freedom is asking the 8-member court to delay the Harris Funeral Home case, which is about an anti-transgender discrimination case as sex discrimination.
Well, clearly they want to delay these things because we got good decisions at the lower courts. Yeah. And if they can't reach a decision at the Supreme Court, then the lower court decision will hold.
Not every single decision at the federal court level have we won. There's some circuits that have gone against us.
But in general,
most of them are
in
good.
general,
yes.
If the right wing wants to hold up these cases, it's because they're waiting for the conservative. I'm explaining to our viewers.
Yes.
I know you know this.
Okay.
It's because they're waiting for the 5th conservative who will rule against us. So that's one reason we're so upset about Kavanaugh, because we know that he's a hardline right-winger. We know he will rule against us. It's not just Roe v. Wade. It is all our cases, too. And
all your cases, too. I mean, if you're just a person participating in society as a consumer, he's against you.
Exactly. And he's going to expand this religious freedom nonsense. You know, we're slowly but surely turning the United States into a theocracy.
It's nice to see the Democrat running for Agriculture Commissioner of Georgia
I was going to get
stand up against these religious freedom laws that he calls hate laws.
Well, he said, his name is Fred Swan, as long as you mention him, and he wants to make rural farming safe for LGBTQ people, because he says too many teenagers are running away from the farm to urban centers where they think there are more protections, and they're ending up homeless on the streets. This is in Georgia.
And women and people of color.
Yep.
Of course, Fred has raised $9,000, and the incumbent Republican has raised $650,000.
All right. So back to the Supreme
back to
Court.
Brett and his yearbook. I mean, now there was a big story in the Times about this, dissecting his yearbook entry, which is pretty heinous, and they cited some things, but they didn't get to some of the worst things that Kevin Sessoms on Facebook has pointed out. One of the things he wrote, you know, one of the things in the entry in his yearbook thing is, I survived the FFFFF 4th of July. Kevin says this FFFFFF thing means find them, feed them, finger them, F them, forget them. That's what it means. And the Times didn't even point this out in their front page article about this. They got into the whole Renata alumnus thing, which is this poor woman who's been humiliated by them.
After signing the letter in support of him, but somehow didn't know about this until now.
I didn't know that boofed meant anal intercourse. And of course, there's all this stuff about kegs or bust. And this is from a church-going virgin. Yeah, he was.
And do you really think
quite
that
salty?
Do you think he kept those calendars from 35 years ago?
I have some from
35 years ago in high school?
No, I didn't have them in high school. I didn't keep a book.
Beach Week.
I didn't keep a book until I got out of college, really.
Well, actually, they're confirming.
I had a better memory before that.
They're confirming the latest charges from Avenatti's client, so they may turn out to be more helpful than Kavanaugh thought.
In a way, it's a horrible cultural moment, and it's a good cultural moment. Reading Patty Davis, Ronald Reagan's daughter, come out about her early experience with sexual abuse,
Padma Lakshmi.
assault.
Yeah.
When 40 years ago, and really, she was also writing about the things that she remembers and the things that she doesn't, the things that are indelible about this. She said she didn't tell any boyfriend or even her husband about it. And now she's writing about it. So it's clearing the air quite a bit.
Padma Lakshmi did the same thing in the New York Times, and with each one of these cases, you get more waves of people coming out. I don't know what effect it has ultimately. It doesn't seem to be changing the culture, and you don't see...
Well, the thing about Kavanaugh is that, yeah, originally it was just this one brave woman, Dr. Ford, and now it's a bunch of women. And
absolutely,
and that didn't used to happen either. Just like it was Anita Hill many years ago. Well, they didn't let other people testify at the Anita Hill hearing.
They did not, and
they're not letting them testify again.
Well, there were a lot of rumors about deals made around Anita Hill in the testimony, including charges that she was a lesbian, and that the Republicans would not bring that out if the Democrats agreed not to release
the guy from Wyoming.
Alan Simpson.
Alan Simpson is there at the hearing going, I'm getting things over the transom here, things. You're not going to believe this stuff. But he wouldn't say it because he had a deal.
Because they had a deal. And the deal was that they wouldn't release Clarence Thomas's rental video list.
Right. Once again, though, we have to thank out-gay Ronan Farrow with Jane Mayer at The New Yorker for digging up more evidence against Kavanaugh in The New Yorker, talking to his Yale classmate, Deborah Ramirez, who apparently had Kavanaugh's penis rubbed in her face.
I am just astonished by the extent to which men are eager to,
we are not that far removed
wave their penises around.
Cavemen.
Charlie Rose, Louis C.K., who else?
And speaking
a lot of them.
Well, this is a terrible segue, but speaking of dicks, I mean, Dick Durbin, the senator from Illinois, is on, one of the morning shows. And, after all this, and the Republicans taking all the power that they can without a filibuster on this, right, which they've had, we need to go back to the filibuster. So Democrats come back and you're going to play nice again? Forget it. We have to play hardball like they do, and we're not.
Now, I didn't watch a lot of the Values Voters Summit.
No, I didn't.
I read some about it. I saw a little of Pence there. We even have a picture of him there speaking.
At this anti-gay conference.
Yeah, but you didn't hear them talking about Kavanaugh or their family values stuff was not condemning any of Kavanaugh's
And they were assured
actions.
by the Senate Majority Leader, Mitch McConnell, that there will be a vote. Of course, that's all he was saying.
He was originally, when he went there, he was saying Kavanaugh will be on the court.
Yeah.
Then the next day,
there will be a vote.
There will be a vote.
There will be a vote. By the way, also there was actor Dean Cain. Did you read about this?
Oh, he's been anti-gay for a long time.
Well, no. I mean, he was promoting a right-wing film called Gosnell about an abortionist who killed a lot of people, kids. It's a terrible story, but it's a very right-wing take on it. And Glad went after him and said, you say you're an ally, you shouldn't turn a blind eye. He says, I didn't research the group. I'm just here to promote my film, and you can't tell me what to do. And I'm pro-LGBT and pro-choice. He voted for Trump.
He's been right-wing for a long time.
Anyway, Dean Cain, Superman.
Can we move on to...
He did a gay movie, too.
Other stuff?
Well, let's talk more about Trump.
Sure. How about him at the UN?
Yes.
Bragging about all these things and getting laughed at, and then claiming that he was looking to get laughs, which was nonsense. But there he was in the middle of the speech saying, we're proud of having gotten out of the Human Rights Council, and you can all fend for yourselves, and we're not going to tell you what to do. And
it's disgusting.
Just abdicating any moral high ground in the world. Not that we have any anymore.
Not that Donald Trump could ever claim any high ground on anything. Look what he's doing. Look what he's doing. And we bring some of these things up. They're not gay specific, but they affect us all. Moving to restrict new green cards for those receiving government assistance. If you use food stamps, you get Section 8 vouchers, or you're on some form of Medicare. They want to, stop you from getting a green card. This is the whole Stephen Miller plan. Yeah. The purge continues. It's going to force older immigrants off Medicare Part D. It's going to affect 320,000 people a year. I mean, and you know, they're pointing out that this is, if you have self-interest, all this threatens your Social Security, because you're not going to have all these workers paying into the system because you're keeping them out of the country.
It's not even that indirect. Where they're driving up the debt and giving these tax breaks so that they can cut Social Security and Medicare.
And food stamps by privatizing it, putting it in the hands of private corporations just to throw people off.
And as we've told you and has been proved, they're removing money from the Ryan White program for treatment for people with HIV. They're removing research funds from the Centers for Disease Control.
Cancer research.
Cancer research.
To pay for separation of families at the border.
Yep. Building cages to put them in.
$10 million from FEMA for all you people drowning in South Carolina and North Carolina.
But what was the big theme at the Values Voters Summit run by the Family Research Council? Gender ideology. That is what's ruining America today. Well, gender ideology.
I associate that phrase with the Holy Father. He talks about that a lot, and more about him later.
Well, so does the FRC.
Now, the State Department is now... they want to make this sound fair, but they're saying if you work for an international agency and you're based in the United States, if you have a domestic partner, you can no longer get what's called a G4 visa for that person.
It's better in Hong Kong.
Well, so UN Globe, which is the gay group there, is saying to the UN employees who are international, if you're in New York, you can get down to City Hall and get married if that's going to cover it. But a lot of these people come from countries where they can't get married,
right?
And it's going to be very, very tough for them. It's of course the U.S. State Department didn't start recognizing domestic partners until 2009. When was Hillary Clinton, Secretary of State. That was in the Obama administration.
There's been an ongoing case by an intersex person, non-binary identified, Dana Zim, who's been trying to get a passport without a gender marker and has been denied by the State Department. A federal court in Colorado has ruled again that Dana is entitled to a passport and does not need to specify a gender marker.
Because specifying a gender would be lying on the form.
Sure.
To check off male or female, because Dana is not male or female.
Right. And BuzzFeed has dug up some more emails related to the ban on transgender people in the military, and has found, again, this is not new news, but confirmed by what they found and expanded upon, that the entire military was shocked at Trump's tweet banning transgender people from military service, and was talking among themselves about, oh my God, have you seen this? Is this real? What do we do now? How do we delay this? How do we change it?
Sure.
Terrible.
All right, I have some good political news.
Okay.
Among Democratic House candidates, white men this year are now the minority for the first time. You know, we've read how record numbers of LGBT people are running for office. You know, we have a lot of out gays and lesbians running for governor and senator. But men now constitute the minority of House candidates. There are 180 women nominated so far, breaking the previous record of 120. There are 133 people of color. Republicans have nominated 52 women, which is a record for them, and a record for the party.
And I think primary season is over, so yes, this is the list.
They are different kinds of candidates. They don't come up through the party. They're people who, because of the situation we're in, decided I'm going to run.
But a lot of them are running against a lot of white male incumbents, and they won't all win. No. And so we'll see how much.
But a majority of them will win.
Well, we can hope. And also a little more local good political news in Cuyahoga County in Ohio, which includes Cleveland and other cities. Those cities have non-discrimination laws, but the state does not. And the county, for the first time, and the first big county in Ohio, has adopted by a vote of 8-3 a sexual orientation and gender identity and expression non-discrimination law. The three who voted against it, of course, were the Republicans on the city council, but Cuyahoga County moving ahead.
They're not like those Connecticut Republicans. We also got similar law in Ross Township, Pennsylvania. Board of Commissioners there, 5-2, passed one. And in Cadillac, Michigan, the city council passed an ordinance covering sexual orientation and gender identity. So we're, despite the times, localities are moving. Local governments, we got to get some states moving.
Well, that is where we need to concentrate a lot of our efforts, because that is the grassroots way everything bubbles up. And the way the Republicans have taken control in the last however many decades is that they started at the local level. And they started with local races and
no,
county.
they didn't. They just gerrymandered.
Well, they did that too, but they elected people at the local level, and they brought them up.
Yes, they got the mayoralty of New York for 5 times in a row.
Well, not now.
Oh, speaking of which,
yeah.
We've talked about Mike Bloomberg saying he wants to run for the Democratic nomination for president, but for Frank Bruni of the New York Times, an out gay man, to write about him as some big pro-gay guy and not know the record. Were you over in Rome, kissing up to the Pope in those days, and forgetting what was going on in New York? Well, Bloomberg was vetoing gay bills, appealing the marriage decision. Forget him.
Yeah.
Mike?
Bad. And, of course, selling out the city to the landlords. And
to his rich friends. Yes, turning it over.
So, please, not for Bloomberg.
It's not very affordable here.
But we should also announce the politician who's going to be here next week, co-hosting with you.
All right. Corey Johnson, the Speaker of the Council, is going to be the co-host here next.
The out-gay Speaker of the Council.
A gay activist since he was in high school, when he was out on his football team in Massachusetts.
Made the People magazine for that, and rumored to be interested in the mayoralty eventually.
Yep. He's the second most powerful person in the city. We're very lucky to have him.
He has co-hosted here before.
Yes, many times.
And he loves it, so he's coming back next week, and I'm taking a week off.
Okay.
Bad political news in Massachusetts.
Yes.
Now, Massachusetts has a hard-fought, hard-won, statewide non-discrimination law for gender identity and expression.
Which we don't have in New York.
And the right wing wants to repeal it. So they succeeded in getting on the November ballot the question, should we retain the transgender rights law?
It is not that hard to get a referendum on the ballot in Massachusetts.
No, it doesn't require a lot of signatures.
Not only does it not require that many signatures, but only 25% of the legislature has to approve it.
Yes.
Remember, on marriage, we had to dodge a bullet not to have a referendum on that.
We're looking very good in the polls.
Yeah?
We have like 75% approval of the law. But we know what happens when the right wing gets active and starts putting out its lies and its smear campaigns. They tend to scare people, and they tend to turn around some of that polling.
Didn't work in Ireland.
This is the United States of America. Let's get real. So I think we have a good lead in Massachusetts. But here is what the right wing has put on the air in Massachusetts to try to repeal the transgender rights law.
What does Massachusetts Question 3 mean to you? It means any man who says he is a woman can enter a woman's locker room, dressing room, or bathroom at any time, even convicted sex offenders. And if you see something suspicious and say something to authorities, you could be the one arrested and fined up to $50,000. Vote no on 3. This bathroom bill puts our privacy and safety at risk. It goes too far.
The nightmare on State Street.
Terrible.
It is awful.
Shameful.
But you have to hope that's the kind of stuff that's so out there that it will repel people.
Well, you're more optimistic than I. I think we have a good, healthy lead in the polls, but that commercial.
I hope we're answering it with some of the images that we put up, like of a very masculine trans man saying, "You want me to go into the women's room?" Because that's where you're saying I have to go.
Well, that is what we have hoped for years, but we haven't seen much of that.
Well,
we see other things mostly, but Man, that is one of the worst. That is horrible.
In Anchorage, Alaska, Alliance Defending Freedom, the right-wing group, is defending a shelter that wants to refuse trans women in a federal suit. They also want the entire non-discrimination law overturned.
Yeah.
A trans woman has...
They're not giving up.
They are not giving up, but I hope
all you have to do is watch the Values Voters Summit, and you see they are not giving up. And in Madisonville, Kentucky, the city council, by a 3-2 vote, rejected the request for a street closure for an LGBT festival on October 13th.
Well, they rejected a particular street. They have to give them some street, some place to have their
festival. They gave them a tiny little side street.
But here's what they said, or a councilman who voted to ban them from that street said, they don't want to be seen as supporting anything political or activist. You don't have the right to do that. I hope they've got the ACLU and are going to sue.
Well,
they don't have the right to decide what the message is on the street.
But it's that kind of attitude that prevails and is so depressing.
Better news from Wisconsin, where a federal court has ruled that the state employee insurance fund must cover gender confirmation surgery.
Yes, they said refusing it was sex discrimination. And the state has reversed the rule in light of this ruling, which is very good news.
In Gary, Indiana, a trans woman named Carmen Carter Lawson, she's got a federal suit against the police department who humiliated and berated her for using the women's restroom when she was visiting the police station. This is somebody who wants to be a cop. And has been and thinks that they're retaliating against her for trying to become a police officer.
I am mildly pleased to report that the New York Times, which last week was reporting on a trans woman who was the victim of a serial killer in Laredo, Texas, has now stopped questioning her gender identity and calling her a man wearing dresses, and now is referring to her as a trans woman.
Okay.
Hallelujah.
We've talked to you about the church planting movement where these right-wing churches take over school space. And in Austin, the school system, said, we've got a performing arts center, but if we keep letting these churches use it on the weekends, it's really not going to be available to the kids. So we just want to cut back on all this and not have regular church services or anything regular there. So we can do that. And Ken Paxton, who's the Attorney General, I believe is running for governor of the state.
No, Greg Abbott is running for governor.
Greg Abbott is still, but Ken Paxton is the Attorney General. He's telling them, don't you run afoul of our Religious Freedom Restoration Act, and he's warning them, but they're still trying to do that.
I just want to shout out congratulations to the LGBTQ citizens of North Dakota who are about to hold their first LGBTQ summit on October 5th through 7th at the Baymont Inn in Mandan, North Dakota. There's their banner advertising it.
It's called Dakota Outright is the name of their group.
Congratulations.
The state has 755,000 residents and 2 senators. One of them is Heidi Heitkamp,
yes,
right?
Yes, please don't defeat Heidi Heitkamp. She's not perfect, but she's a Democrat.
She is.
Yeah.
And we need a majority in order to stop these court appointments.
Yeah, meanwhile,
this is called math.
A federal appeals court in Tennessee has ruled that a Pride Fest there 3 years ago discriminated against anti-gay pastors who had shown up to demonstrate at the Pride Festival. Now, they had bullhorns.
Yes.
They were very in your face.
They were right at the entrance to the thing, so their bullhorns and sound system was affecting the ability of this outdoor group to be able to have their thing.
So they were moved a little distance away, and they sued.
The first court said that was okay to move them, and I've been moved many times.
Many times.
Many times. I've been moved. When the Pope came in 1979, we were moved 3 blocks away. And they said you're within sight and sound. You just have to yell louder.
You needed a bullhorn.
Actually, I should. Most of them moved, but some of us stayed right there and dropped our signs. And then when the Pope was like as near as the camera is here, we were able to shout "Gay rights are human rights" at Pope John Paul II.
And we were doing
who's now a saint.
We were doing a demonstration outside St. Patrick's once, and they had set up a pen for us across the street, and we just went and stood in front of the cathedral on the sidewalk there and ignored the pen across the street and just did our demonstration.
Now you're making me think of my favorite St. Patrick's demonstration, maybe not the one you're thinking of.
No, I know that's not your favorite.
This was the 100th anniversary of St. Patrick's Cathedral. And they were celebrating it. Walter Cronkite hosting. All the politicians on the steps at lunch hour. I was just passing by. I grabbed 3 people. We stood there. And of course, the church has these big things in the front, for the doors. We just shouted, gay rights now, gay rights now. We drowned them out. And the police officer...
I have no trouble believing that.
Now, today, of course, they'd grab us and move us 3 blocks away. But the police officer, I remember him saying to me, "You're not doing your cause any good." But he didn't move us. And I said, well, you know what? Did you read what they did to us last week? We're happy to do this.
Okay.
All right.
All right. So, well, as long as we're on religion, we should discuss the incident in Chicago.
Yes.
Where the Reverend Paul Kalchik?
Supich? No, the priest, rather.
Yes,
the priest, yeah.
Of the Resurrection Catholic Church burned a banner with a rainbow flag and a cross intertwined. Yeah, there it is. And there's the burning of it. He just got it into his head that this was demonic or something.
He said he wasn't anti-gay. Doesn't he know rainbows are in the Bible?
Well, he didn't like that, so he burned it.
Anyway, he said, so he got suspended by Archbishop Supich out there.
Yeah, there's some question about whether he's ever going to be allowed back.
But not for this. It wasn't for this. It's basically because they think he's out of his mind.
Yeah.
He said he was sexually abused by a priest as a seminarian, but he's not anti-gay.
Yeah.
All right.
He didn't like the cross on the banner?
I don't know. I don't know what's in the heads of people.
All right. Well, what is in the head of the Social Security Administration?
Yeah.
Because this lovely couple, Helen and Marge, were together for 27 years. And Marge died in 2006 before they could marry in Washington State, where they lived. Nonetheless, they were together for 27 years, and so Helen applied for survivor spouse benefits from the Social Security Administration. She was turned down because they weren't married. And
you have to be legally married for 9 months for that to kick in.
Yes, before the death.
But we weren't allowed to get married.
Exactly. So Helen is now suing with the help of Lambda Legal Defense, and it's an interesting argument because what they're saying is, no, they weren't allowed to marry, and the Supreme Court eventually declared that unconstitutional. So if the law saying they couldn't marry was unconstitutional, she should be entitled to those benefits.
We have gotten some retro things as time has gone on since the marriage thing.
Yes.
We haven't gotten an apology for Stonewall yet from the New York City Police Department.
I put in that request again the other day.
Or for ongoing harassment of transgender people now by the police.
And gay men who still get entrapped by the New York Police Department.
Right.
All right, but we will follow this case to see whether Helen gets her benefits, because that could be quite a precedent if the courts rule that because the law was unconstitutional, she is entitled to those benefits.
Maybe Judge Kavanaugh, if he becomes a justice and having been through all this, maybe he'll become more sensitive to people who've been discriminated against.
There are some ugly cases of attacks on gay men in particular in Williamsburg,
I was
Brooklyn.
kidding about Judge Kavanaugh. I have to put that in there right now.
In Williamsburg, Brooklyn, New York, 2 gay men were leaving a gay bar separately. They didn't know each other.
1 o'clock in the morning.
A guy comes along and clocks them. Just
knocked unconscious.
Yeah, each of them.
Spewing anti-gay epithets.
Yes, at each of them separately.
We have a picture of the perpetrator, and he was apprehended as we go to press right now.
Yes.
So, and if you know him, put his picture back up there. If you know him, maybe he's been guilty of some other crimes that we can pin on him.
And 2 people have been arrested in Oklahoma. They have been luring gay men on Grindr, and they're thought to have some accomplices who haven't been arrested yet. And they lure them to a suburban garage where they tie him up, rob him at gunpoint. And one guy said he went in there, he was taken in, and he stepped over something, and it turned out it was someone else who was there who was being robbed, and they were just lining him up. So please be careful about Grindr. Please meet people in public places
and introduce them to a third party.
Yeah.
Even if it's the waiter or the bartender, whoever it is. In D.C., Washington, 2 gay men were attacked by 5 people because they were gay, beaten on the corner of 16th and U Street. There were 4 attackers, 4 men and 1 female attacker. William Southern said his face was bashed, requiring stitches. He said, "I will never stop being gay. I will never be ashamed of who I am." And he's new to D.C., so it's not a good introduction to the city.
No. A nicer thing in D.C., Billie Jean King got the Great Americans Medal from the Smithsonian's National Museum of American History.
Doesn't the Family Research Council know about this?
Well, they do now.
How about some library stories? In Wisconsin, Marathon County Library will keep the book on gender identity in the kids section, despite objections from a concerned citizen. The book is called Who Are You? The Kid's Guide to Gender Identity. And then the other one is in Lafayette, Louisiana. These anti-LGBT groups are suing to stop the library from going ahead with drag queen story time. They're called Warriors for Christ and the Special Forces of Liberty, and they say it endorses transgenderism and marginalizes Christians.
In Ohio, a teacher, Emily Osterling, who has been teaching special needs kids since 2001, is suing the Butler County schools because they fired her for supporting trans students. Not nice. Right. And in Pennsylvania, a trans woman who's a woman of color is suing anonymously because she knows what happens to trans women of color. Fired by a nursing home after she complained that she was being harassed as a staff member there.
In Florida, a guy named Brian Denyu-Mustier, 33, pretended to be a woman on Craigslist, had guys over, mostly from a military base, blindfolded them, performed sex acts on them on camera, half of them without them knowing it, and sold the videos to porn sites. He was busted. He pleaded guilty to 2 counts of illegal interception of oral communications. That sounds dirty. He did this for 4 years. Some of the men consented, but most didn't. And he faces 10 years, and he's being sentenced on November 29th.
That's
and then
longtime
gay activist Bruce Friedman, we knew him in New York, there he is, has died at the age of 70 after a long battle with leukemia. Early member of Congregation Beth Simchat Torah, the gay synagogue, on their board of trustees. Got very involved in politics, and he lived in Queens, and he served as an officer of the Lesbian and Gay Democratic Club from '97, became their president, a much beloved figure in the community. I love what Arthur Leonard said, our friend. He said,
lawyer.
Legal. He came to the synagogue for the first time in 1977 and met Bruce, and Bruce said, "You're a lawyer, you're going to be our co-counsel." Got people involved, and that's what we need. Get people involved.
Yes.
We will miss Bruce.
Yes.
International news.
Okay. We're talking about violence stories. Let's start in Greece, where an activist there and well-known local drag performer, Zach Kostopoulos, was beaten to death.
It's a very strange story. He was apparently avoiding a tumult in a local cafe, and he went into a jewelry store, but he got locked in somehow. When he tried to bash his way out because he was locked in, two guys on the street started kicking him to death.
Yes.
And the police came
There's
and they
video of it online.
They have apprehended these guys. And it's 500 rallied in protest of what happened to him.
In Chechnya, we have, over the last year or two, covered the horrors of what's happening to particularly gay men there, rounded up, arrested, tortured, killed by the cops. Well, there's more of it going on now. They are now opening what are being referred to as concentration camps for gay men in Chechnya. Last week, reports of 100 detained, 3 killed, many tortured. They're being ordered to leave the country and to name others to survive, I guess. Well, horrible stories. Now, you don't hear anything about this at the UN. You don't hear Trump complaining about this, because he's abdicated the U.S. having anything to say about human rights anywhere else.
Well, there was the LGBT event at the UN this week, and Michelle Bachelet, who is the head of the UN, she's the High Commissioner for Human Rights, the former president of, or Prime Minister of Chile. She called for respective differences and an end to criminalization of gay people, violence against gay people, deprivation of rights. She said, tackling extreme violence, at least, does not require changing any of your norms. You just at least have to stop the violence. Well,
except that in many cultures, and including in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, people feel it is a cultural norm to beat up gay people and physically attack them.
It's not a legal norm. It was. I mean, we haven't executed gay people.
In some places it is.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Well, and in fact, a very brave guy in Zimbabwe, which you may remember for many, many decades, was ruled by Mugabe, who couldn't have been more anti-gay. A teacher there, Neil Hovelmeyer, has come out. He says he did it to fight homophobia and stigma and to give hope to young students.
And in Kenya, the people who made the film Rafiki, which is lesbian theme, which they couldn't get shown in Kenya, well, they did allow it to be shown for a couple of days. So
a week.
Qualify for the Oscars.
A week.
And all the screenings were sold out immediately.
They had to add more screenings.
Well, I hope
now, Rafiki was a big hit at the Cannes Film Festival. Which is another reason it was so shameful that they wouldn't show it in Kenya at first, but evidently they're eager for that Oscar. Well, because Lupita Nyong'o is Kenyan, who won the Oscar, and she's tweeting in support of this film. This film, Rafiki, is going to be shown at the New Fest LGBT Film Festival here in New York in October. The last week in October is New Fest. You can look that up and go see Rafiki. It's also going to be shown at the London Film Festival and other festivals around the country and around the world. So Rafiki, keep your eye open for that.
Now, we told you how in Malaysia some lesbians got caned for having sex with each other or being thought to have sex with each other. And the Prime Minister, who's 93, the new Prime Minister, Mahathir Mohamad, criticized that. He said that's a bit much. But he did say we cannot accept same-sex marriage and LGBT rights. They have this penalty for oral and anal sex over there is 20 years caning and fines, although it is rarely enforced.
They have a different attitude in Vietnam these days, where they, on the one hand, nothing's legal, but on the other hand, they're very gay-friendly. And for instance, they welcome the out gay ambassador from the United States sent by the Obama administration, Ted Osius, and his husband and kids, and that all went very well. Well, it turns out in Vietnam, and this is almost inconceivable for those of us old enough to remember the Vietnam War, they now are running The Bachelor. They have their own version of The Bachelor in Vietnam. And so the current iteration of that has a male bachelor and a number of women who are all trying to be chosen as his prospective wife. Well, one of the women on a recent episode said to him, I'm sorry, I can't continue. I have found love, but not for you. I have a different object of my affection.
Yes.
And she turns and walks away from him and goes to one of the other female contestants and says, all right, come on, let's get out of here. Come home with me. You can see all this online.
Have there been behind the scenes any lead up to this?
I don't know.
All right.
We haven't seen anything like that in the U.S., although we've seen a little, there's always a little homoerotic action on these shows. But so the second woman goes up to the bachelor and says, I'm so sorry, but really, yeah, I'm going. And he says, oh, please stay. And she says,
we could have a threesome.
Probably. And the two women walk off. Now, the not so happy ending to this story is that the second woman comes back to compete on the show. I'm not sure what the whole story is, but the story, the headlines in the papers are, rest of the world is freaked out by this, but in Vietnam, nobody cares.
Okay. And soon maybe...
But it's quite a little sight to see these women negotiate their relationship on The Bachelor, rejecting this guy.
And soon they may not care in Trinidad and Tobago, although it's very conservative there. But the High Court ruled that gay sex should not be criminalized. This is building on the April 12th decision about this at the lower court. The state asked for a 45-day stay of the decision so they can appeal to the Privy Council over there in Britain, and they were denied.
But there's some civil rights lawyer who's going to...
This is in Bermuda.
Oh, okay.
In Bermuda, the government is appealing this. Now, I don't get this. The Supreme Court of Bermuda ruled for same-sex marriage, but they want to appeal, and they have to. There's a court of appeal before they get to the Privy Council, and they've hired a British lawyer,
a civil rights lawyer,
I know, to argue their appeal in
against marriage.
Yes, in November. Don't do it.
Very confusing.
Don't do it. Everybody deserves a defense, but not.
Well, those are the British territories or whatever, but back in merry old England, the peripheral royal, Lord Ivor Mountbatten, who
cousin to the Queen,
who we told you was engaged to his male partner, although he says, I'm still not comfortable with being gay. Well, they got married. There they are.
Married a guy named James Coyle, yeah.
And Mountbatten, Lord Ivor Mountbatten, was given away by his ex-wife, Penny, there in the middle.
It was a small ceremony, no big royals, but in the grand tradition of royal weddings in England now, they had a gospel choir, as Harry and Meghan did.
And Prince Edward, the youngest of the Queen's children, sent his congratulations and his regrets that he was otherwise engaged.
And in India, we told you about how they legalized gay sex, and now they've criminalized the Muslim practice of a man being allowed to instantly divorce his wife by saying the word talaq 3 times. You can also text it 3 times and then you're divorced. Women are not allowed to do this. So there's a little bit of an uproar over it, but...
no, wait a minute. They've outlawed that?
They've outlawed that practice of divorcing with saying the word 3 times.
Well, it sounds so appealing.
But women aren't allowed to do it to men.
It should be available for both or all genders.
Click your heels 3 times.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of people who would support that.
And in Ireland, new poll, 77% of people want the church to accept gay marriage. 90% say priests should be able to marry. 86% want women priests, and the numbers are similar for practicing and non-practicing Catholics.
And this is Ireland, which has legalized same-sex marriage and was not particularly friendly to the Pope in his recent visit.
And 45 trans people are running for the legislature in Brazil. That's a big deal.
All right.
And in Uganda, the Constitutional Court dismissed a petition against polygamy because the petitioner wasn't ready to proceed. All right.
Not that they're supporting polygamy.
They have it there. They have polygamists. They have legal polygamous marriages. For 8 years, there's a group that's been fighting it. They went to court and said, we're not ready, Your Honor. And they said, get out of here. You've had 8 years. If you want to do it again, you do it again.
Yeah.
All right. Entertainment news? Oh, yes.
Well, should we talk about the play that you saw and I saw half of?
Bernhardt Hamlet. Now, Sarah Bernhardt, supposedly the greatest actress of the 19th century. You've all heard about her. She...
Maybe not the young'uns.
Teresa Rebeck wrote this original play about her playing Hamlet. And
which actually happened.
She's lovers with Edmond Rostand. I assume that happened as well. Who wrote Cyrano de Bergerac. And she's trying to get Rostand to write a prose version of Hamlet. Now, if you're going to write about great actors and great playwrights, everything they say better be great, and it was kind of silly.
I thought it was pointless, and that's why I left at intermission. But you said it got better in the second half.
Janet McTeer.
And the Times liked it better than we did.
Janet McTeer, breakthrough role in Doll's House. There she is. I mean, she's a fantastic actress, but I don't like her in this. But yes, it did pick up somewhat in the second act, where you get to see a lot of Cyrano, but not the Hamlet thing. And then I saw a play called The Nap. It's a very dark farce about snooker, which is kind of like billiards, a British game. It's very big over there. You get $500,000 if you win the contest. And it's about gangsters by Richard Bean, who gave us One Man, Two Governors, which was a rollicking farce. But
sorry, I missed that.
This includes a trans gangster played by the trans actor Alexandra Billings. And there she is. And Ben Schnetzer plays the working class snooker champ. He was the lead in Pride, the movie, and it's directed by Daniel Sullivan, and it's relatively mindless fun, but it has kind of unpredictable twists. It's a little violent at the end of the second. I'm just warning you.
The Nap.
The Nap. The Nap refers to the surface of the table.
Yes, not to sleeping.
And there was an actual snooker champ on the stage playing during the show.
Yeah.
Not the whole time, but part of it.
Enough to be fascinating for those of us.
You get a little sense of the game. They explain the game, and there's funny commentary from the television commentators of the match.
Okay.
Now, Studio 54.
Yeah, this is a documentary opening next week, October 5th, but I'm not going to be here next week, and I saw the documentary, so I wanted to recommend it this week. Get yourselves ready. Now,
get your calendar out, Brett Kavanaugh.
Studio 54 was a legendary nightclub, but it turns out, as you'll learn in this movie, it really was only hot for 3 years, 1977 to 1980, and was created by Ian Schrager and Steve Rebell. And
famous for being hard to get into.
Yeah, well, that was the whole shtick.
I was only there for a benefit. I was never there on a regular night.
I think I was there for one regular night and saw Grace Jones perform, which was just ecstatic. It was wonderful. And there's not enough Grace Jones in this movie, but there's a lot of other stuff, including Roy Cohn, who was involved in representing it because this place got in a lot of trouble for money laundering and drugs and stuff. And what you see...
people went to prison.
Oh, yeah. Steve Rebell went to prison. Ian Schrager, I think they both went to prison.
We'll see.
It's been too long since I saw the documentary. But what is fascinating to me about this movie, aside from just all the creation of this legendary nightclub, is you see Roy Cohn in this movie telling people how to behave in a way that is exactly the way he mentored Trump.
Sure.
And it's all the deny stuff.
Is Trump in it?
No. And it's, well, there may be a few shots of him at Studio 54. But it's all about being completely aggressive, about fighting everything.
Which is what we have to do to beat the Republicans.
Well, it is a fascinating visualization of everything we've been told about what Trump learned along the way from Roy Cohn. And it just personifies exactly what we've seen in the last couple of years.
You won't see all that in the trailer, but we're going to run the trailer, and you will see our old friend Rollerina, the great activist.
Yes.
So let's go.
Let's look at the trailer for Studio 54.
When you walk through those blacked out doors, you're in another world.
Andy Warhol, Calvin Klein,
Elizabeth Taylor,
Mick Jagger.
It was hot, sexy.
It's like an adult amusement park. It is so preposterous. We both came from Brooklyn.
They had this understanding that they were getting out and they were going to do something big together.
We wanted the ultimate nightclub.
Beautiful models, celebrities with gay men, transgenders, and it all started blending.
A world of fantasy that absolutely exploded.
Sex was in the air.
There were mattresses in the basement.
The amount of drugs was profound.
Everyone felt like they had to be there.
The people started to get angrier because they couldn't get in.
You can't have this much popularity without somebody wanting to take it down.
All of a sudden, the lights went on, the police were there, and it was like the reality was in your face.
The basement had bags of cash and drugs.
The feds,
mafia,
the White House.
They definitely messed with the wrong people. Controversy was like a moth to a flame, and it got even bigger.
A haven for inclusion and acceptance.
I don't think they had any idea that it would be important in our culture and the history of what was going on all around the world.
This was revolutionary.
Inclusion and acceptance with a velvet rope.
Well, those who got
And
in
with
were
Roy,
diverse.
and with Roy Cohn, a bigoted closet case.
It was a moment in time, and it's a fascinating documentary. It was made by the same guy who made the Scotty Bowers documentary about the guy who was the procurer for all the stars and their same-sex relationships.
And there was a fiction film about it with.
Yes, of course. But Studio 54 is definitely worth seeing, and for many reasons, and opens next week in New York on October 5th, a week later in LA, and then around the country. So you can look that up.
And as long as you're marking your calendars, mark Valentine's Day, because that's the opening of the Stonewall 50 exhibit at the New York Public Library. Went to a reception for that this week. They had the president of the library there and everything. And it's going to focus on 1965 to 75, which were the real hot years, of pre-Stonewall and post-Stonewall.
Interesting.
The really, fecund years that where things really got rolling. And then they're also going to do a huge Walt Whitman exhibit starting March 29th. All this is going to go through Stonewall and past Stonewall as well. If you're coming to New York for Stonewall 50, and if you're coming to New York for Stonewall 50,
well, we are planning. We're beginning to plan this major human rights, civil rights march for Stonewall 50. Aside from the Pride Parade, because the Pride Parade is a lot of corporate floats and not really what we think is the best thing to do for Stonewall 50. So we are signing up supporters, and you can sign on to this whether you'll be here or not, endorse the idea of a Stonewall 50 human rights march, just like the women's marches, like anti-war marches, like the original Stonewall marches, and
Christopher Street Liberation Day marches. And and also what has occurred to us is New York shouldn't be the only place this is celebrated. In fact, New York is in the midst of an anti-gay country that doesn't even have protections on the basis of sexual orientation and gender identity.
Well, that's a big reason to do this, is because we have not won the revolution. All you have to do is watch this show to know that every week that there is a heck of a lot more work to do. And we need to be out in the streets demanding the work go forward, and that we assert a value system. And the value system is not celebrating T-Mobile.
Right. So we hope you will either participate in this or do a march on, is it June 28th?
30th, I think.
Well, it's the last Sunday of June.
Yeah.
Tell them where to go.
ReclaimPrideNYC.org. ReclaimPrideNYC.org, or just Google Reclaim Pride and sign on as a supporter of this. I have a date on...
We've signed up. Gay USA endorsed without even consulting you.
On Sunday morning, I'm talking to a guy in Budapest who wants, Hungary, not any other Budapest, who wants to talk about how they can organize for Stonewall 50 there. So please get on board. And meanwhile, we will keep working on it, and we will see you. They've rolled the credits. I think we have a few seconds.
Well,
Eddie, predict Kavanaugh, up or down?
Push. I think they're going to have an investigation now. I'm just going to say
I think he's out. All right. Check us next week. Bye.